When I arrived in nature, I had no choice but to surrender, to let go of all expectations and allow this journey to unfold as it was meant to. Christopher Thompson and I set out from Denver International Airport, driving a rented Sprinter van deep into the wild, about 3.5 hours outside, climbing to 8,000 to 9,000 feet in elevation. I have to admit, my asthma fought me, but the crisp mountain air, the grounding energy of the land, and the breath work I've been working so hard on helped me push right through it. And yes, I'm still working on that to release. I'm almost there. At first, we thought we'd dive right into this episode, on day one at the Great Sand Dunes National Park in Colorado. We gave it a shot, but the sound wasn't quite right. But what we did capture, however, was a glimpse of Christopher's story, his path forward in nature, a thread that would weave into the journey we were about to embark on. Every day, we rose with the sun and ended with the sunsets. We walked barefoot in the dunes, breathing in the vastness of the surreal landscape, and then, as if called by something totally unseen, we left the sand and followed the pole into the mountains. There, surrounded by towering pines and endless sky, we meditated, took photographs, and sat in silence, realizing something very profound. How could we record an episode about healing in nature without first allowing ourselves to be in nature and to surrender to it to heal ourselves? Everything is a story, a journey of emotions, a path from one lesson to the next. And when you sit with nature in stillness, in surrender, the answers rise, the emotions surface, and then the healing begins. This podcast wasn't just an episode, it became a pilgrimage. In fact, it turned into 2 episodes. One, a deep dive into Christopher's story, his journey through horticulture, photography, and the wilderness that shaped him. And then, in an unexpected twist, Christopher turned that camera and questions on me for the first time. And that conversation will be dropping in an upcoming episode. For now, I invite you into this moment. I hope you feel the inspiration, the presence, and the beauty of this journey through our words, through the breathtaking landscapes, and through Christopher's incredible photography and video. Welcome to the Love of One, Healing in Nature with Christopher Thompson. How's it feel on your feet?
That's great.
Yeah. Serious earthing. We are on this adventure for Love of One podcast about healing in nature. When did you start healing in nature?
As soon as I got a car, when the journey began for me, that's when I started backpacking a lot and mountain biking and just having the freedom to go to places that I wanted.
When did it start getting really serious for you?
You know, when I was going to Cal Poly for horticulture. I was in a lot of class. I just find just fascinating by the way plants and how it all fits together. You know, I took a soil science class, and that absolutely my line. So I think it was just being like formally educated and realizing that it's as deep as you want to go when the love affair started. And then through photography, I think it's grown.
When did photography start for you?
About 10 years ago.
What sparked that interest?
That's a good question. I think I had a friend that was in, and it was just a skill that I didn't have that I wanted to have. So I started off by getting a little bit of camera equipment and a nicer computer for the editing. And ever since then, it's just been a love affair.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
How do you find healing through it?
Well, art is a way, how do I describe this? I guess it's almost like you meditate.
Yeah.
Because you can go a lot of different ways with it. So I think it's just kind of fun to find your own style and perfect it.
That's beautiful. I'd like to discuss first, I think I want to do it like your story. Like, what's your
Hmm.
story? What's your story?
My story.
How did you, yeah, I think the horticulture part, like what we talked about on the
Hmm.
sand, you know, go to school, identifying within yourself this part of you that wanted to reach out and do horticulture and learn everything about it and do landscaping. And then what led you to stop all that and do what you're doing now and bring in photography and how you see the world through photography? And
Well, I think
wait, I'm
like
not.
maybe my 20s was trying to figure out who I was. And like I had a lot of different jobs along the way, like
Hmm.
title insurance and several different banks and a lot of office jobs. And my stepdad, growing up, he basically was his mindset was it's going to be a job. You're going to end up hating it. Just pick something and get good at it. It always felt like so wrong to have that mindset. I was kind of wandering. In my 20s, I traveled a
Hmm.
lot. I went to Southeast Asia for 3 months and Europe for 3 months and Central America for 3 months. And it was just me like, I was surfing a lot at the time. So they're all like extended surf trips, but they're also like an education for
Hmm.
me. Boy, traveling is just such a great education, isn't it?
It is. It gets us out of our bubble of thinking in this
Totally.
small little space. Like, this is all the earth and the world and my life is. When you step out of that and go see other cultures, even like bigger cities that you've never been to,
Right.
and see how people live differently, it really opens your eyes to seeing things from a different perspective too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. So,
Hmm.
like, I think that was like what I needed to get out of because I grew up in Central California and
Hmm.
I spent most of my formative years there, pretty small community. So it was good for me to travel and learn about myself. And then um, it was in gosh, I guess it was like my late 20s. I was going to Cuesta College and I was getting an AA degree. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I just knew like it was something that I wanted to do. And I took one of my elective classes was a botany class. And
Mm,
it's amazing the difference a good teacher can make in your life.
for sure.
So I took a botany class and it was an absolute mind blower. I was like beyond fascinated.
Well, how so?
Plants are amazing.
Mm,
I mean, it's like it's a life study.
mhm,
And I was particularly interested in California natives. And that's when that was like during the part of my life where I was really getting into backpacking. So I was like, I started off with Big Sur. Big Sur was like my first love.
mhm,
And I did every trail in Big Sur. I went like obsessive compulsive on it. I
mm.
had the maps on the wall. I had like it was a little too much.
A little much, yeah.
Yeah. But like I was way into it.
Mhm,
So it was cool learning about California natives, seeing them where they were and really getting a deep understanding of plant communities and how it all like fits together.
wow. And so what did you do with all of that knowledge and wisdom of plants?
I carry it like everywhere I go,
Mhm,
I see it.
mhm,
It's just like part of like the fabric of my life.
mhm,
I'm sure like, maybe through your jobs, you probably look at life in that through that lens,
mhm.
like landscaping. I certainly, we drove by, I forget the name of the town, but there was that city hall. And
Yeah,
the first thing I noticed was zero landscaping.
yeah, it was very desolate. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So I think in the same sense, especially when we're out in places like this, I
Yeah,
see, plant communities and even through indigenous people, like where they would have hung out,
Mm-hmm.
because that was everything for them.
Yeah.
So, these Pinos pines right here, this was a really big staple for, I don't know who
They'd eat
lived.
them, the pines. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally. It was like heavily guarded.
Yeah. And they still do that in New Mexico, actually, the
Totally.
Native Americans
Eastern Sierras is
still today.
totally.
Yeah. So you mentioned through the lens. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you get into photography? Was it in these moments of being in nature and seeing the beauty around you that you wanted to capture it differently?
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
It was like through backpacking.
Through
I kind of,
backpacking.
right, I started to want to just document all
Mm-hmm.
the places I was going. And then I fell in love with it. And I fell in love with, like, I guess the art of the composition.
Mm.
There's a lot to it. And then it all comes together sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
The composition, where you're at, the lighting, and it's just like, it's so nice when you get it.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that heals you on certain levels? Photography itself, because to me, I would think when I try to do it, it's not like yours, but it makes me slow down and be in the moment of where I am to look through that lens and
Right.
think, does that look right? Is the sun hitting right? It's being present. Do you find that to be
Totally.
in your work?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to escape into the art, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
living in the now. Um, it's just it's a great outlet for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, as a creative person, I think it's like just a natural outlet that I'm drawn to.
Mm-hmm. So we've been discussing for the last couple days on our own pilgrimage
Mm-hmm.
about surrendering and being in the moment. And I think we've been working on that a little bit during these few days.
Mm-hmm.
What do you find that helps you when you're out here to be in the moment? Is it looking through your camera? Is it just stopping and listening to the sounds around
I think
you?
that's it. I think turning everything off
Mm-hmm.
and just being totally immersed in where you're at.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah. How often do you do that?
Well, I work as a fire lookout in the Umpqua National Forest,
Mm-hmm.
and their fire season is June 15th till October 15th.
Mm-hmm.
So during fire season, I'm the primary lookout up there, and I haven't left yet. In the 2 seasons I've been there, it's been the 4 months straight.
Mm.
So, which I like.
Yeah.
And the other 8 months, I've been traveling.
Mm-hmm.
So, with extended periods of stay at friends' houses and stuff like that, like trying to escape either the bitter cold
Yeah.
or
It's a little
some
chilly
weather.
today. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Wyoming
Mm-hmm.
in January is not right.
Not a really good idea. Yeah.
Not if you don't have a good heater.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. It's a good point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
When you're out in this beautiful landscape, what are some of the things you start to think about or that kind of immerse yourself in to feel the energy around you? Or what are some thoughts that you start to think of when you're just out here in nature and the peace and the quiet and nothing but your thoughts?
I find myself trying to find places that Native Americans hung out.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm not doing photography or photo or video editing now,
Yeah.
I find myself walking around and not just looking for artifacts, but trying to, on a bigger picture, what they were doing there,
Mm-hmm.
the place where you're at, and
Mm-hmm.
like just trying to, I guess, get a bigger picture of the history of where you're at.
Yeah. Who walked before us and
Totally.
what did they do and what was their life like? And
even geology, how did it
mm-hmm.
get here? And the progression of the plants, like,
Yeah.
you know, um, the waxing and waning of
Mhm.
these communities, none of it is static. They just
Mhm.
move way pretty slow compared to the human experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, when we slow down, we start to think
Oh,
like
yeah,
how did everyone before us live in these climates
totally.
with the trees and the resources around them? And, and how did they work in unity with the wind and the fire and the
Totally.
water and
Right.
all those things?
Right. It's the extremities that I
Mhm.
love. Like one of one of my favorite places is the bristlecone pines in the White
Mhm.
Mountains east of the Sierras, and
Mm.
they have some of the oldest trees in the world. They
Really?
have documented like
Hmm.
bristlecone pines that are 4,000 years old,
Wow.
right? Living trees.
Wow.
And the trees that are on the ground, the dead ones, they could have been laying there for 1,000 years. So you could be looking at things like, I mean, ancient
Mhm.
for our experience.
Mhm.
I love that. And, these things are like truly shaped by the elements.
Yeah. Speaking of, earlier this week we were at the Great Sand Dunes in
Hmm.
Colorado,
Right.
and that was incredible because it's like all this sand was like pushed and bulldozed up against the foothills of these mountains. But where did it all come from? Which really just makes me think, like we've been talking about,
Right. I
how
mean,
did this get here?
the mountains,
Mhm.
wind, water,
Mhm.
especially bringing it down. I
Mhm.
mean, that's what they say, but, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is
Right.
amazing. It's just
Right.
breathtaking, and
Totally.
but
Humble.
yeah, you just sit in the silence and you're like looking around and thinking, how did this get here? And how long has this been here? And who found it first? And
Is it a creation?
yeah, is it a creation or not, you know? Yeah.
Right.
Or is it just cyclical? Part of Earth's movement of water and wind, and
And maybe that's just the way God creates. I
it's
mean,
beautiful. Yeah.
who knows, right?
We- We're learning
Totally.
step by step.
Hopefully.
What are some of your favorite places
Wow.
that you've gone?
Big Sur, first love, the Sierras, second love, probably the biggest love of my life.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, the Sierras
Do you
are
spend
just,
a lot of time there still?
for like a 10-year stint when I was living in California, I was spending a lot of time.
Mm.
My goal, which I hit most of the time, was 1 week out of every month
Wow.
sleeping on the ground,
Wow.
backpacking. And that was primarily in the Sierras.
Mhm.
That was my 40s, and
Mhm.
half my 30s
Mhm.
is probably the Sierras, like the lion bulk of it. The Los Padres National Forest in the area where I live is extensive. So there's
Mm.
all kinds of backpacking opportunities in Central California.
I see.
Hmm.
I see. Okay.
How about you? Like, when's the last time you went backpacking?
Gee, that's such a great question. It's been a while. Yeah. It's been a while. I usually do small trips like this where it's 4 or 5 days,
Hmm.
just because of the kids and everything
Right.
and my other responsibilities of adulting in this world
Hmm.
and this podcast.
Sure.
So, but I tend to stay somewhat close to home in Oregon. I go to the beach a lot, but mostly the mountains, the Deschutes National Parks, forests, Umpqua.
Yes.
Growing up, I did a lot of camping in the Washington National Forest,
Really?
upstate in Washington,
Yeah.
and that whole state, actually. My father still today is a logger, so
Hmm.
we were outside a lot in nature, camping my entire life.
Hmm.
All summers would be all summer long.
That's awesome. Spent a lot of
Backpacking,
time outside as a kid, you were
hiking.
saying?
Yeah, I spent
Hmm.
all days and evenings till my mom called us in or until it was time to go
Hmm.
to bed.
Right.
My brother and I would have tree races who could climb to the top of the tree the
Hmm.
fastest. and the
Right.
farthest, and I always
Mhm.
won. Because I love sitting at the very top of the tree. They were dug firs, right?
Mhm.
And I would just sway at, with the wind at the top of this tree, and I would just sit there for an hour or two.
Have you ever read the John Muir story of him in a windstorm?
No.
Climbing a tree to
Oh.
get the full experience.
Oh, well, I lived that my entire childhood.
Yeah, you might resonate with that
Yeah,
story.
I probably thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I will pick that up and read it for sure.
Cool.
Absolutely. Just always outside playing in the dirt. I remember in the summers I would be in my under, back in the 80s,
Yeah, yeah. The Superwoman?
Yeah, Superwoman, yeah, and Care Bear.
Nice. Oh, okay.
My brother had those big Tonka trucks that you still see today,
Mhm.
and I would sit on the back of them and ride them around in the dirt with the Hot Wheels and the Barbies and make little tracks in the dirt of race cars and stuff. And
Mhm.
yeah, just always, always, always living outside my entire childhood
That's awesome.
until high school.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Did you become so busy in life that you might have, like, veered away from that aspect of yourself at some
For
point?
sure. Actually, it's a great
Mhm.
question for me. Yeah, I think that when I started my professional career
Mhm.
in the software world and business consulting, I traveled a lot, but in a different way, not backpacking and stuff, but traveling for work and professional and going to big cities and seeing. But I would also spend time seeing the arts, like catching a play or, to broaden my horizons of,
Sure.
of, of every aspect of life.
Right. Did they scratch the itch?
They did. They did
Cool.
scratch that itch.
Nice.
Like seeing a Broadway play, seeing a
Mhm.
bunch of those and going to concerts and
Mhm.
going out to nice restaurants and traveling here and there and everywhere and even into small towns in Alabama I thought I'd never ever be in, right? And
Mhm.
finding my way and discovering my way through cities when we didn't have cell phones
Yeah, yeah.
and maps,
Challenging.
Google Maps, we
Sure.
had to print our stuff out and
Right.
find our way and hope we made it get back to the airport on time.
I remember traveling and tripping out.
Yeah, yeah.
I hope I don't get lost right now.
Yeah, and I did. I got
Yeah.
lost a lot. I got some
Mhm.
tickets. I didn't pay some tolls on accident and
Whoopsie.
we live and learn. And then it wasn't until more recently in the last 5, 10 years that I was like, what am I doing? I need to take my kids camping. I need to go to the beach more. I need to go to the mountains. And
Mhm.
then I started that journey. And then when we met, you made me get out even more.
That's awesome.
And that I will always have gratitude in my heart for.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
you
awesome.
you helped me get back out and see the beauty that I've missed this whole time. Get
Cool.
me start getting me back to myself. So
That's fun.
that's why I wanted to do this interview with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it really catapulted me into finding who I am again.
That's fun
So
to hear.
yeah, and it all happens in nature,
Mhm.
which is and so for these past few days, I thought, oh well, we'll just dive into this podcast. We'll just get
Mhm.
this stuff done, and I wasn't feeling drawn to do that for the first couple days
Good.
because I feel that it tells a story
Right.
and that I didn't feel compelled to have this interview until the last
Mhm.
day.
I mean, not to circle back to landscaping, but
Yeah,
I feel a garden is the same way.
yeah.
Like when you first move into a new house, you shouldn't immediately start the design process. You should
Ugh,
sit back and let it like come to you.
I love that.
Yeah, you gotta. So maybe in the same sense that the podcast, like you had to like maybe just get a feel for it for a minute and kind of
Yeah, because
assess it out.
because what I've been understanding too is we started off at the sand dunes, thought we were going to be there for quite some time.
Right, right.
And then I was like, you know what? I feel like the mountains is where we really need to go.
Yeah, yeah. Colorado.
Colorado, I mean,
Plenty
that's
of
why we're
that.
here. Yeah.
Sure.
So we came up and then we scoped out some spots and picked a spot that was a little different than what we usually do. And then I started meditating and found out I had to do some grid work and that all played out.
Nice.
I find that there's so much solitude that obviously you get when you're out in the wilderness, but I'm also out here healing myself, not just doing this podcast adventure, but
Hmm.
really sinking in deep to listening to my thoughts and
Good.
my inner voice, right?
Yeah, you were probably really busy up until leaving for this trip.
Yeah, it sure was.
So
Yeah.
it takes a couple days to,
Takes a couple days
yeah,
to settle and melt
absolutely.
in. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
And
So glad you're here.
what else do you want to share with people about going outdoors?
Wow. Well, gosh, everybody's different.
Yeah,
I could
it's
certainly
true.
share what it does for me.
Yeah, let's start there.
Well, uh, I think it just goes down to who I am as a person. I
Hmm.
Maybe it has the fact to do with I was raised camping and stuff
Hmm.
like that, so it might, in a sense, bring me back, to those memories,
Little inner child.
possibly.
Yeah.
Um, it's my happy place. I think it's
Hmm.
just the quick way to put that.
Yeah.
I feel weird in a city.
Yeah.
I don't fit.
Hmm.
Square peg, round hole kind of stuff.
Yeah, I could understand.
So if I go too long, I get weird.
Hmm.
I don't know what it is about me. I just need to get back.
You just need to be grounded.
ET
Yeah.
phone home kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just need to
So
ground, right? Yeah.
yeah, I get pulled to it.
Hmm. When people think of grounding, what do you think grounding when people say that?
Gosh, for me, it's just immersion.
Mm.
I don't necessarily. My grandma's big on it. She's like, you got to take your shoes off, and she's probably got a good point. It felt great walking barefoot in the dunes, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And barefoot's the way to go. A
Yeah.
lot of cactus here, so
There
you got to
are.
be.
So I wore these grounding boots, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They have these like copper pegs
Mm-hmm.
in here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always earthing,
Very
trying
cool.
to,
Have you
because
felt?
there are a lot of cactus here.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the Native Americans must have had a problem with
That's where
that.
moccasins came into play, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some good ones.
I did step barefoot a little bit around here. And of course, what did I step on?
Did you?
One of those little stingers got me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I know.
So now I learned my lesson. I put my boots back on.
I even see Maya being cautious, like looking down.
Mm-hmm. More often.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it would suck to run barefoot here.
Yeah. So just immersion for you. Just immerse yourself in the surroundings and
Right.
enjoy them for what they are.
Totally. And, photography is something I think about constantly. So, like, scouting for locations
Mm-hmm.
and, picking the shot,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even imagining what I want
Yeah.
and then going to try to find it. That's always kind of fun.
That's a fun
Like,
game.
write the punchline before the joke's even out.
Yeah.
So, but it's kind of a fun way to go about it,
Mhm.
I don't want to say manifest it, but you could certainly be drawn to areas where, you were, I don't know. I mean, the shot might be. So
Yeah.
find the good composition
Mhm.
and then wait for the light.
The light. Yeah.
It's all about light.
Yeah, so sometimes you're out early morning, late
First
evening.
couple of hours of the day and the last
Mhm.
couple of hours is where it's at.
For the lighting
Unless it's
aspect.
overcast, like today, it's nice filtered light coming through, which is hopefully good for what we're doing here.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Right.
Hi, Maya. Hi, Maya. Maya's with us. Chris's dog. She's the sweetest ever. With so much gratitude, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into healing in nature. This experience wasn't just about recording a podcast. It became much more than that. It became about surrendering, listening, and truly immersing ourselves in the sacred landscapes of Colorado. If you want to see the breathtaking photos, videos, and experience the stunning backdrop of our podcast interview in the mountains and the sand, be sure to check out Christopher's work. You can follow him on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. All that information is in the description below of this episode. And if you're listening to the audio-only version of this episode, be sure to watch the full visual experience at youtube.com at Love of One Podcast.